Jeremy, what are you saying?
What about those pushing for negotiation, for diplomacy, often criticized for being Russian puppets, yet deeply concerned about this, what could be a global conflagration, or even what's happening just alone to the Ukrainians? You have 1,000 religious leaders in the United States calling for a ceasefire. Bishop Barber, we played a portion of his speech where he said the war is immoral, it is illegal. He fiercely criticized Putin, but said negotiation has to be the way.
So what? Okay, here's the thing that I don't understand. When people, I'm going to assume some people are acting in good faith. When they say we need to negotiate, we need to do this, we need to do that, Ukraine is willing to negotiate. The terms are they get the fuck out of their land. See, in a regular war with no threat of nuclear Armageddon and no promise for negotiation, if Ukraine won, do you know what they would do next? They wouldn't stop at the border between Ukraine and Russia. They would conquer Russia, or at least parts of it, or at least try to conquer parts of it. Nowhere at any point has Ukraine made that commitment. Therefore, it is already starting the negotiation on even terms. Namely, if you withdraw now, this conflict ends. This is not an interminable conflict. This will end if you end the war. So Ukraine is already implicitly willing to negotiate under those terms. That's already the marker there. So when they say we should be more willing to negotiate, what you actually mean is Russia should be allowed to keep conquered territory. To which the question is, why would we allow them to do that? Why would Ukraine allow them to do that?
Your response.
I welcome the call by 1,000 religious leaders and many, many other people. And I've had a number of very interesting discussions all around Washington yesterday on the possibilities of promoting the idea of a internationally organized ceasefire and negotiations.
Also, there's no reason to ever trust Russia when it comes to a ceasefire. They lied at every stage all the way up to their invasion, and they never respected the ceasefire agreements under the Minsk I or II agreements. There's just no reason to believe they would actually follow by it. They would just continue to lie and push for territory. The fact that they're unwilling to respond to international pressure is the reason we're in this situation. It seems like international pressure didn't bring us any good. All the sanctions and all the negotiations and all the organized ceasefires in the world did not work.
Absolutely and totally condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the brutality that goes with it.
Corbyn literally went on RT to deny that Assad did gas attacks. He knows what he's doing here. Man, did Corbyn seriously deny the Assad gas attacks? Wow, he actually did. Unbelievable. He's done this exact same thing before. Refuses to blame Assad for chemical attacks in Syria, demands all sides work together on a ceasefire. Man, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm really hitting it. I'm glad he's ousted as labor leader. If he ever won as labor leader and then ended up basically just parroting Russia's line on foreign policy, it would be a blow to socialism, like, globally. He's better in domestic policy, but holy shit. That's the Daily Mail. Might not be the best source. It's everything. You can Google it. It's everywhere. It's not just the Daily Mail. Yeah, it's so bad. Like, you guys don't understand how bad it is. Like, Assad is the guy so bad that he single-handedly plummeted his country into ruin and sent millions of people on refugee hikes that ended up causing the largest refugee crisis of the past half-century in Europe. And then, after all of that, Corbyn turns around and goes, yeah, well, he's probably not using the chemical weapons that everyone knows he's using against civilians. Essentially, like, covering up war crimes for a dictator. Insane. Again, like, this is a common problem with a lot of lefties, where, like, if you ask them for their positions on fundamental values, they're really reasonable. Corbyn, I think, has really good positions when it comes to, like, healthcare and public welfare and a bunch of great stuff like that, you know? But then every position they could possibly have that's favorable to Russia is for, like, no reason. No reason. It's so weird. Just a lot of lefty brain rot. A lot of lefties just think that in order to be like a leftist geopolitically, you have to side with the other narrative. And you're siding with the military-industrial complex if you agree with basic factual things.
And the destruction of life in the Ukraine, the loss of lives of conscripted Russian soldiers is awful and appalling. This war could drag on.
I'm sorry?
Of lives, the destruction of life in the Ukraine, the loss of lives of conscripted Russian soldiers is awful and appalling. This war could drag on and on.
First of all, the Ukraine. Second of all, kind of weird to conflate the Ukrainian civilians being killed and the Russians invading being killed. I mean, they're conscripted, but yeah.
And on, more and more arms could be thrown into the conflict, more and more people would die, and you'd end up with destruction all around. Surely to goodness, here we are in the 21st century, watching in real time a conflict going on. Can we not do better than that? Call a halt to the conflict.
It's not our it's not we being better. It's Russia did the thing. Russia did this. It's not we. Why is it on what did I do? What do you mean?
Have negotiations and agree on a viable future.
Which they'll never specify what they mean by that, because they're too cowardly to just say, yes, I think Ukraine should cede territory to the Russian invasion. They won't admit to that.
Russia and the Ukraine can negotiate, albeit...
Did he do it again?
...under the auspices in that account on a viable future. If Russia and the Ukraine...
He did! He actually goes the Ukraine as default. The only people I see say the Ukraine by default are people peddling Russian propaganda. I guess a lot of old people would, yeah, like people who remember the Soviet Union, I guess. But nowadays, like right now, when I see people talking about the war, everyone says Ukraine. The only people I see who say the Ukraine are pro-Russia types. That's not to say nobody does call it the Ukraine innocently. It's just interesting that somebody as politically engaged as him would do that. Why does Russia call it the Ukraine? Because when you say the Ukraine, you're kind of linguistically implying that it's a province, a territory, in context of Russia's. You're referring to it as like a location, you know? Whereas Ukraine, like capital U, like formal, would be a country, an independent country. So a lot of like Russian apologists will say the Ukraine because they're referring to it as a kind of like fake country, like, yeah, like they say the Donbass. Exactly. But Russia stands won't say the Donbass. They'll say like the Luhansk and Donetsk independent people's republics or whatever. Like they'll make an effort to distinguish them legally, you know? Yeah, the South. Yeah, stuff like that, like it's a region.
Can negotiate, albeit under the auspices in that occasion of Turkey, to ensure that grain supplies flowed out of Russia and the Ukraine through the Black Sea, which are very important to feed people.
The United States of America is an exception, I guess. Yeah, this is very much like a specific linguistic idiosyncrasy. This isn't a universal thing. Saying the doesn't always mean you're disrespecting a country. In this specific context, the use of the term the Ukraine is used to imply that it's just kind of a frontier province as opposed to an independent country.
In the Middle East and North Africa, then they can come together on lots of other issues itself. And so can we...
Oh yeah, like saying the Sudan is colonial speak, or the Orient, or the Congo. Ever heard that one? The Congo? Because when they said like the Congo, it was like darkest Africa, like a territory to exploit resources and people, not like a country.
Stop having armchair generals in all of our studios discussing how this could happen, that could happen, this could go on and that could go on, and this could be destroyed. Instead, raise the voice for peace and raise the voice for hopes and justice. I support.
This doesn't mean anything. Raise the voice for peace?
The Russian peace campaigners. I support the religious leaders that are calling for a more rational process, and I call upon the leaders of the countries that are closely involved in this to heed those calls.
Isn't it? So, Russia, you want Russia to heed those calls. Isn't it interesting how all these give peace a chance types are never saying the one thing you'd think they'd be saying, which is, Russia, please fucking back off? Isn't that interesting? You'd think that would be like the main thing they'd be saying. Russia invaded Ukraine. You'd think they'd be saying like, "Hey, please, like, no more war. Russia, please just stop. Just withdraw the territories. Please don't let anyone else die." But they don't say that, do they? Instead, they put the onus on Ukraine to start like negotiating. And by negotiating, what they mean is accepting concessions. And what by concessions they mean like let Russia keep territory. It runs all the way down to that, you know?
And find a way out of it. All wars end with some kind of peace conference. Let's jump to that stage.
That's not always true at all. But okay.